This is CBC Vancouver News.
This doesn't change the fact that these are still police officers in schools.
The planned return of school liaison officers to Vancouver classrooms, why critics remain skeptical.
You feel connected with people, you feel connected with your family, and it's the month of giving, the month of forgiveness.
Muslims in Vancouver celebrate Eid al-Fitr, marking the end of Ramadan.
So we'll lose at least 50 to 70%.
Major losses for Okanagan grape growers after an extended cold snap kills precious buds. Good evening, I'm Lien Yeung. Thanks for joining us. Polo shirts instead of uniforms, inclusive training, and smaller guns. Those are just some of the changes Vancouver police are planning for the return of school liaison officers this fall. On Thursday, VPD gave its Civilian Oversight Board a glimpse into the revamped program. But as Yasmin Gandam tells us, critics say it's not what students actually need.
But a police officer is still a police officer.
After Mayor Ken Sim's ABC party won a majority on the Vancouver School Board this past October, the VSB voted to bring back the SLO program, citing public safety issues. This week, details emerged on what it would look like.
We believe it was necessary and it is necessary going forward for them to have those firearms. But with that being said, we still needed to mitigate that concern that students and the sight of the firearm was triggering, and we believe that we were able to address that concern.
The program will include cultural awareness training for officers and more diverse hiring and the use of unmarked vehicles. The most visible change will be their clothes. Polo shirts and slacks instead of a formal uniform. They'll still have guns, but the weapons will be smaller. Some VSB trustees are skeptical.
What is this going to look like? I mean, if we're going to have unmarked cars now, that in some cases may be even more traumatizing to some people, because it's like you don't know, you're under surveillance. You don't know if there's somebody lurking around that is a police officer, right?
Others say the changes could help foster a safer learning environment.
I'm very excited for this program to actually start. We are coming up with a revised and a reimagined program. We have listened to a lot of stakeholders, including a lot of different type of groups.
The program was initially axed over how it affected Black and Indigenous students. Some advocates say even with changes, the program is not what schools need.
This is not addressing the underlying issue, which is if we know that students in classrooms are having issues with conflict, with issues at home, issues that limit their ability to engage with the curriculum, police presence does nothing to alter that. Why aren't we actually investing in supports like family support workers, peer support workers, counselors, after-school programming?
Trustees like Ma say they were not consulted about bringing back the program, and although they can't stop it, hope some changes can be implemented.
I would like to have more discussion in terms of what it's going to look like before we do the sign-off with the VPD, with the what's called the memorandum of understanding or agreement that we're going to have with them.
Despite the concerns, the revamped SLO program will return in September. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Burnaby RCMP released photos of the person who allegedly shoved a senior to the ground at Metrotown Mall on Thursday. The 89-year-old woman was transported to hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. Mounties say the same suspect assaulted 2 other people in the mall before leaving. Anyone who recognizes the person is asked to contact Burnaby RCMP. Eid al-Fitr celebrations have been taking place all over the world this weekend as Muslims mark the end of Ramadan. Hundreds of people gathered in Vancouver today for more festivities. As Janella Hamilton reports, they say it's a time to unite and build understanding amid rising Islamophobia.
After a month of fasting from sunrise to sunset, nights of prayer, reflection, and charity.
It's the most important month in the year for us, for all Muslims.
It was all hugs and laughter for more than 500 people at the Vancouver Arab Club's Eid al-Fitr celebration.
You feel connected with people, you feel connected with your family, and it's the month of giving, the month of forgiveness.
For newcomers like Maram Suleiman and her husband, the celebration at the end of Ramadan is a chance to connect with her Palestinian roots.
We were just like looking for something to do, to know, like meet new people, just like practicing, let's see like how we are doing it back home, and we are just like feeling like we are home.
We have more than 70 people coming from Syria, and some of them are still new migrants. So I guess it's really a good forum for all of them to unite and to, celebrate it together.
Hattie says there are at least 400,000 Muslims in BC, and events like this are even more important amid rising Islamophobia.
To send our message and to build awareness to the community about who we are and how we can build a better Canada.
Alamle says one way to do that is by teaching younger generations about the importance of Ramadan.
We want our kids and our sons and daughters to know our culture and to learn how to make people happy and how to share good feeling with others.
Her 15-year-old son says he's learned about compassion during the holy month.
The point of Ramadan is not eating because you have to feel what other people feel, because they're suffering. People are not eating, they can't find food.
It's hard because you can see a lot of people eating and drinking and having fun, and you have to restrict yourself, so it gives you a lot of patience.
Suleiman says here she feels safe and hopes the festival brings with it understanding.
Muslims people are always looking for to make peace and to make friends all around the world.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
BC's Filipino community is asking for the federal government's support to build a new cultural center. More than 150,000 Filipinos call BC home, and while there are local Filipino associations, there's no province-wide community hub.
It's so important to have a space to be able to call your own, to share your culture, to express and celebrate with your community. And it's something that the Filipino community hasn't had, at least here in the Lower Mainland. And it's a long-standing dream. And as far as long as I can remember, the Filipino community has wanted to do that.
Earlier this month, the province did announce it would put $250,000 towards planning for the project. Aquino says he's grateful for that investment and is hoping to see similar support from Ottawa. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh was in Burnaby today, unveiling a proposal to stop so-called renovictions and skyrocketing rents.
So what we're proposing is a fund, an acquisition fund, that allow a not-for-profit or community organization or the city to be able to purchase the building and keep it in the hands of someone who wants to keep the rent affordable. This is going to help millions of people across the country keep their homes and bring down rent.
Singh says his plan would rein in corporations who are buying up rental buildings and hiking up rents. He also praised the BC NTP for creating its own similar acquisition fund. The Okanagan's multi-billion-dollar wine industry could take a major hit this year. Vineyards are dealing with serious damage from a harsh winter cold snap. As Brady Strachan shows us, it's bad news for winemakers and the thriving tourism industry that relies on them.
Okay, so we can cut this bud. That's how we check the damage.
South Okanagan grape grower Balwinder Dhaliwal doesn't like what he's seeing. These tiny buds on his vines are what will turn into this year's grape crop.
And if we can go a little bit more deeper, yeah, they're brown and black. So that means that this is done.
Extreme cold last December froze the delicate buds solid. The damage is unlike anything he's seen in his 30 years of growing grapes.
Every single variety is damaged. So we'll lose at least 50 to 70%.
These vines here in Oliver were damaged in the cold snap. This field here is just one of 600 acres of Dhaliwal's vineyards that sustained damage over the winter. Crop loss is projected right across the Okanagan Valley, where the vast majority of BC's wine grapes are grown. The BC wine industry is estimating a 50% drop in grape production this year. The winter damage is the latest in a string of extreme weather events to hit the region, everything from excessive heat and wildfire smoke to flooding and extreme cold.
So this is all combining to having an effect on our grape production. And over the last 5 or 6 years, we've slowly seen a decrease up to 30% in what we should be getting off of what we know is planted. So we attribute it to climate change.
We're beholden to Mother Nature.
A reduced harvest will impact winemakers like David Patterson. For a region so dependent on tourism, he's worried about a ripple effect if there's less wine to go around.
Tasting rooms not being able to open because they just don't have the wine. Well, if the tasting room's not open, that's not going to drive tourism. It's going to be a negative effect on tourism.
It's just a dry wood, right?
Back in Oliver, Balwinder Dhaliwal is cutting his losses, literally chopping down this block of Roussan vines that were significantly damaged.
This variety is toast, it's done. And then we just cut it off and we can put in the new variety.
He says responding to the changing climate is the only way forward. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Oliver, British Columbia.
Well, it might be the last week of April, but there's a snowfall warning in our province. Environment Canada says up to 20 centimeters of snow is expected for the areas west of Fort Nelson. An unseasonably cold frontal system moved into northern BC, prompting a snowfall warning this morning. It's expected to continue through Monday morning. Drivers are being warned that visibility may be reduced due to that heavy snow. And looking to some sunnier weather, what is an appropriate outfit for a Vancouver swimming pool? The park board is set to discuss a report on Monday that covers a list of acceptable attire.
And I think people have shown to be pretty responsible and without the need for extra extra rules or regulations.
Bikinis, there's a wide range of sizes in bikinis, and some of them are pretty shocking.
I didn't think, we just don't get offended by that type of thing.
I mean, at the end of the day, a body is a body. It's up to us if we want to sexualize the body or not.
Appropriate items on the report's list include bathing suits, t-shirts and shorts, swim hijabs and rash guards. Items that would be considered inappropriate, anything designed for a sexual or intimate purpose, and clothing that absorbs water, like sweatpants or jeans. The report follows requests from staff at the city's aquatic centers for a clear policy on acceptable outfits. The talks are making progress, but they're not there yet. After the break, we'll bring you the latest on the civil servant strike in Ottawa. Toxic drugs are killing First Nations people in BC almost 6 times more than the rest of the population. The data comes from the First Nations Health Authority in its 2022 toxic drug report. And as Angela Sterrett reports, it shows First Nations men are being killed at even higher rates.
I was in so much shock. There's so much emotional pain.
Last November, Small Boy lost his 23-year-old son Darius to toxic drug poisoning. He was Cree, a drummer and singer, and known for his generosity and kindness.
My son had such a loving and caring spirit. You could be strong and you could still be taken away.
At 21, Darius slipped on some ice and broke his collarbone.
And that's when everything changed for him. He had to get surgery, and he ended up, becoming dependent on painkillers.
Men made up 63% of toxic drug deaths among First Nations people in 2022.
2022 was the worst year ever in terms of deaths.
First Nations people represented 16.4% of toxic drug deaths in BC, despite making up only 3.3% of the province's population. This means First Nations people are dying from toxic drugs at nearly 6 times the rate of the general population.
I think as a parent, I was in denial. I didn't want to see my son in that light. And his death, he showed me, this is the ugly truth.
Now, Small Boy wants to open up conversations about addiction among Indigenous men and about expressing emotions like grief instead of masking it with substances.
That whole side of colonialism really influenced our society to be tough and to, not really, express your feelings and not to, basically not to have needs.
And colonialism through residential schools, the 60s scoop, and contemporary racism has created widespread trauma.
As an Indigenous person and somebody that's down here, I can sort of recognize the disconnection.
Disconnection from culture, land, and community, and also a serious lack of support. Livingstone started the Western Aboriginal Harm Reduction Society when he was a drug user in 2002. Today he wants to help others, but he says there just aren't enough resources.
There's no access to housing and the supports that are out there just don't really, they're not enough to actually help people make changes in their life.
He says the Safe Supply program needs to be expanded to meet diverse needs, along with more mental health support and ways for men to make connections. Angela Sterrett, CBC News, Vancouver.
The strike by over 155,000 federal government workers is closer to a resolution. In a statement tonight, the Public Service Alliance of Canada says progress was made on remote work and wage increases. But there's no deal yet. In fact, workers will be escalating their strike action starting tomorrow as talks continue. Wages, remote work, and seniority rights are the main issues. Tomorrow, the federal government announces new protections for airline passengers. They come months after disruptions that snarled flights during the holiday season. And as Sarah Levitt reports, that's not the end of passengers' problems.
Not a good stay for us.
Gregor Svalinski and his wife were supposed to be in Frankfurt yesterday, but their flight from Fort Lauderdale was delayed, making them miss their connection in Montreal.
We rebook automatically to the next flight. Number one is to stay here in Montreal one night.
Compensation from their airline? A few $10 food vouchers.
I feel, terrible and tired.
The Canadian Transportation Agency has been flooded with nearly 45,000 complaints in the past year. Now, Ottawa is putting airlines on notice. The Minister of Transport is set to give more details Monday on new rules for passenger rights. One of Ottawa's main goals with this legislation is to close a loophole that allowed airlines to claim a delay or a cancellation was due to safety concerns. Now, they'll have to prove that's the case or pay up.
They want to get away with paying nothing to people when something goes wrong.
They're inconveniencing people and losing bags. I think there is a great deal of obligation that should feel to customers.
Some of the other changes coming include an increase in the maximum fine for violating regulations from $25,000 to $250,000. Complaints made to the Canadian Transportation Agency will be looked at within 30 days and a decision made within 90.
The regulations as they are today are a mess.
This aviation expert says the new rules are needed, but he says the current complaint process doesn't work.
We've got to create a new, more streamlined, more effective way of putting those, of dealing with those complaints, make sure the visibility is there on the resolution of those complaints.
The government says it's about moving the burden off passengers and onto airlines. The new rules go into effect September 30th. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
Governments are moving to get diplomatic staff out of Sudan as the battle between the army and the paramilitary RSF rages forward. U.S. and British embassy staff have been evacuated. Canada today suspended consular services and says its diplomats have left as well. The RSF says the army conducted new airstrikes today and lineups continue for bread, and the World Health Organization is reporting attacks on health facilities. And in India, police have arrested a prominent Sikh separatist leader. They took Amritpal Singh into custody after a month-long search in the northwestern province of Punjab. He was arrested under the National Security Act and can be detained without charge for up to a year. Singh has been leading a movement calling for an independent Sikh homeland. And you're looking at a time-lapse of the clouds rolling in around downtown Vancouver this afternoon. And after the break, a Port Moody teen is the last standing Canadian at American Idol. We'll tell you more about his story next.
We gotta turn this around. We ain't gonna make it. It'll all be wasted. Throw it all away if we don't make some changes now. Before it's too late, we need a 180.
That's Port Moody's Tyson Venegas sailing through to the top 20 at American Idol. The 17-year-old is the last standing Canadian in that competition. Burnaby's Emma Busey was eliminated tonight from the top 24. We caught up with her in Los Angeles just before the results show aired.
All the contestants that I've met throughout this entire journey, I've become friends with. It really doesn't feel like a competition, you know what I mean? I know at the end of the day, it technically is, but like, it doesn't feel like that when you're in it. And yeah, specifically with Tyson, we really like bonded over the fact that I'm pretty sure live like 20 minutes away from each other or something like that.
After her elimination, 20-year-old Busey shared this video of herself as a little girl singing. She wrote that Mini-Me would be so proud of what she accomplished, and it was the most incredible journey. We're proud of her, too. Well, two Abbotsford golfers are making sports headlines on the PGA Tour in Louisiana.
6:30 in a row. How do you like that? This team is on fire, this Canadian team. Look at that scorecard.
Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor have landed a second-place finish at the Zurich Classic Duo Team event. They birdied 10 of the first 13 holes to pull into the lead at 28 under, but pars on the final 5 holes left them runners-up. The pair grew up playing golf together and have been childhood friends since they were 12 years old.
I'm sure where we grew up, Ledgeview Golf and Country Club is at home staring at the screen. Probably more into it than we are almost, but yeah, it's been great.
We know each other pretty well. We enjoyed the time this week, and I think it showed off on the golf course.
In the end, Hadwin and Taylor shot 63, tying the tournament's alternate shot record. The two will split just over $1 million in prize money. Not bad for a day's work there. It's always great to know and learn more about British Columbians doing great things around the world. All right, that's it for us. Have a great weekend. Have a good week. Thanks.